Bienvenidos de regreso a la presentación semana 2, Biliteracy Instruction. Esta parte de la clase va a ser en inglés. Vamos a empezar con la diapositiva número 12. En este momento le voy a presentar, vamos a ir a la presentación y vamos a empezar con la pregunta esencial. Entonces cambiamos nuestro idioma de español a inglés. Essential question, how can we develop literacy concept and skills in Spanish and English in the bilingual classroom? Before we continue, I want you to keep this in mind, this question in mind, and think about what is the best way to help students or bilingual students to develop literacy concept and skills. To start the lesson, the anticipatory set, we are going to answer the first question on your respond and reflect assignment 2. At the beginning of your assignment, there is a question about Dr. Kathy Escamilla. That it says, what is one idea mentioned by Dr. Escamilla that was new to you or that interests you? So we're going to watch the video, and we are going to learn about the best approach to teach Spanish-speaking students in our community.
Well, my name is Kathy Escamilla.
And going back to the after we watched the video, going back to this presentation, we already heard what Dr. Escamilla is interested in her research, and she says that about 60% of bilingual students come to our schools learning, I mean, in both languages, that they already know some background of English language. So we need to know or figure out how to teach English and Spanish to bilingual students so they can become bilingual and biliterated. So saying that, we have different approaches. We have two different approaches. One of the approach is based on the transitional programs that we had in the past, and also the simultaneous program that we have in the present. So thinking about the four programs that we have in Texas, where we have the late exit and the early exit, and then we have the one-way dual language uh, program and the two-way dual language program. So think about the best instruction that we need to provide to our students. And she talks more about the paraliteracy, which is the students learn in both languages. They learn how to read, write, and all the language components. So think about that. Simultaneous bilinguals, they know more Spanish and English when they start school in kindergarten. Based on the article that we read, paraliteracy is an approach to biliteracy instruction in which students learn to read, write, speak, listen, and process into languages simultaneously. So beginning in kindergarten to first grade. So eventually we start in kinder, but we move on to first grade where we where we teach that phonics instruction to the students. So they need to have a um, a background in that language. In parallel instruction, students are provided with daily instruction in both Spanish and English, in reading and in writing. And it is very important to know that parallelist instruction is not concurrent translation. We do not translate during the day, during the instruction day, which means that to say something and then to repeat it again. So we never translate when we teach our students. Um, Other words, if you teach the same class in the morning and you teach the same class in the afternoon, either way for for reading block or for writing, you're not going to translate. You're going to be teaching the same concept, but it's going to be in a different way. Um, so saying that, we're going to go to the next slide. And here we going to use the term or paradigm shift. That means we have new ideas, and new ideas we're presenting in this lesson is the way to see different things or a different perspective. Um, what is a paradigm? Paradigm is a standard perspective or set of ideas. A paradigm is a way of looking at something. And we also can discuss about the model of pattern. If you would like to click on the link, you're going to see the terms that we are using for these specific um, way of looking something or a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is an important change that happens when the usual way of thinking about or doing something is replaced by a new and a different way. So while we are talking about a paradigm is because when we see the different programs that we used to have before in the past for to teach bilingual students, we have to see a different perspective now because we have the population is changing. So we have to see a different perspective. We're not going to be using the same type of programs to teach our bilingual students. We need to now to focus on a different way how to teach these kids that they come to school learning in both languages because they already have a background. Either way, because they already attended preschool before they come to a public school for kinder. So we have to think about they are being already being exposed to the second language, so they have a background already. Paraliteracy is considered, one of the best way to teach bilingual students. But research, we're still learning from research and from the experts to see which one is the best program for the students. time to read. Now I'm going to stop the presentation and you are going to read the article and complete the 5A protocol on your RR for lesson 2. But this time I'm going to give you like at least 5 minutes so you can go back to your reading and you can highlight the most important terms and definitions or information that you think is interested to you. All right, so I'm here on Let's Read. This is one part of the RR, part of the assignment, where you can write about the other assumptions or main ideas that you found in the article. Did you agree? What did you agree with? What did you argue about if you don't agree with something in the article or aspire or act? So I'm going to give you some time to reflect on the reading and I'm going to give you some time to answer the A protocol on the assignment after watching the video from Dr. Escamilla as well after reading the article for this lesson. In addition, you're going to complete the vocabulary graphic organizer on the RR2. And while you watch the presentation, complete the vocabulary so it's going to be easier for you. Um, Today in class, some students asked about what visuals to use, and you can use some from the presentation or you can find any other visuals in online. It depends on you, but I would like you to think and reflect from the article and use definitions in your own words. So you can type the term like I have provided the terms on the RR2, but you will have to write the definition in your own words. On the example or visual, you can use examples that I'm providing in this lesson. Paradigm shift. This is another definition that is more, it's brief, but it's more like to the point. Develop literacy in the dominant language first, then develop literacy in the other language. So that's transitional sequential approach. So we need to know both um, different approaches and the definitions for each and how they are um, apply to our literacy instruction. So develop literacy in both languages at the same time, literacy paired literacy approach. Why do we teach it this way? It's because the student needs to develop both languages at the same time. And the reason is because the student demographics they have changed. It is said that two-thirds of non-English speakers are born in the U.S. 75% of kinder to fifth grade to fifth students in the U.S. who speak a language other than English are born in the U.S. Like Dr. Escamilla mentioned, that now we have more students coming from families that they were born in the U.S. Compared to in the past that the students were coming from other countries. So what impact does this have on the students' exposure to English? What impact does this have on the idea of language dominance? And which forms or basis of the transitional approach to bilingual education? This is an example of that TPR, a simultaneous versus sequential bilingualism. And I have included two different ways to see it, a vertical lines, which represent most of the students now in schools, which they become, to school knowing two languages already. And the horizontal, which is another way to see it. When I talk about TPR, um, the meaning for that is stand for total physical response, which is like we use a visual to remember the definition, or if we're going to compare a simultaneous versus sequential bilingualism, we're gonna see it in a different way. So we have most of the students are vertical um, bilingualism, vertical or horizontal. So basically, simultaneous start from 0 to 5 years old of age that students are exposed to a second language, so they become bilinguals. Language dominance, a transitional sequential literacy approach. This is the second approach, which students are dominant in blank language and they know little of the other language. So that means that they are very dominant in first language that they learn at home, and they when they go to school, they know little or the other language, but they're not fluent. Therefore, we need to teach in first language until they learn enough of the other language to transition to learning in that language. The previous approach, we had different programs, transitional bilingual education. So from grades K to second to third grade, we have a Spanish instruction until the students were fluent in English. Um, so the oral English instruction was very evident in the classrooms. Now, transitional from one to the other, it was happening until third grade in the late exit. Language dominance. Many of our students are born in the US. So do they enter school only knowing Spanish? This is one of the questions that a lot of teachers um, have, because most of the students that come to us, they already have a background of both languages, so they are already not fluent bilinguals, but they emerging bilinguals. So bilinguals usually acquire and use their language for different purposes in different domains of life and with different people. Different aspects of life often require different languages. I have called this the complementary principle. It depends how or where you use the language. Like for example, in my case, I came over here when I was in high school. I learned English. So I was in a classroom where my teacher was English speaker only. She didn't speak any Spanish, but I was immersed to the language only in English, so I didn't have that support of my second language. My dominant language was Spanish, but I have to learn English. But I was never instruct in both languages, so I used the language for different purposes. I was only speaking English when I was in the school for the school purposes. But when I was at home, I was using Spanish, speaking with my parents, speaking with my family. Um, so it depends how much of the language you use, you become biliterate. Um, it's hard for me to pronounce that word, but it depends how, if you use, for example, more English at home, or if you speak more English at work, or you speak more English in different places, like it can be during when you visit different countries, or you have like you are assisting like a game, or you go out with your friends socially and you speak that language, you're going to become more fluent in that language. So your language use, the language in which you are dominant, depends on the situation. So bilingual people usually don't have a dominant language because we use the language everywhere and we usually transfer from one language to the other. We can speak Spanish, for example, with our parents. Some other bilinguals can speak only English or both. With our spouse, we can speak Spanish or English or both with our children. So here is the time for you to put like a check mark and see how much language or which language do you speak the most to find your dominant language. So a bilingual brain is like a caldo de pollo. A caldo de pollo, it has different ingredients and vegetables, and it has all different colors. On the other side, the dominant language, it just focuses on only one meal. So we can see it that way. This is just one example to explain how a bilingual brain works and how when you process the language, you always are thinking about how to say that in the other language. So you have more vocabulary words and you can express in a different perspective, um, versus one person that only speak one language is limited, in different, like for example, in the vocabulary. So sometimes we find some words that we don't know. in one language, but we seen it before or we heard about it before in the second language, which is easier for us to gain more vocabulary in our language. I'm not sure if I can explain very well, but this is just one visual that I'm using to understand, what a bilingual person uh, brain works when you know two languages. So dual language literacy sequential and pair approach. So we have two different instructions here. We have the Spanish instruction and the English instruction. This doesn't mean that the lesson they have to be repeated or done in the same way. Um, when we teach in Spanish, it has to be authentic. So if you teach, for example, in the morning one of the subjects, and then in the afternoon you teach it in English, it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be repeated or translated exactly the same. It comes simultaneously. It comes naturally. So that is one example of how to teach in a dual language program, the sequential pair approach model. So keep in mind the goals, transitional to English bilingual, and dual language, for example, is develop both languages to become biliterate. In your practice for the assignment RR2, the Venn diagram, you're going to complete the Venn diagram. In the article that we read on page is right here, I think it's page 3, you have the literacy square per literacy simultaneous literacy on one side, and then you have the traditional bilingual and dual language program sequential literacy on the other. So we're going to be able to compare both approaches, and we are going to identify what they have in common, at least three different things they have in common. So answer the essential question at the end of your Venn diagram, which is how can biliteracy be developed in a bilingual program? So how can we develop literacy concept and skills in Spanish and English in the bilingual classroom? And what is your takeaway from this lesson? If you have any questions about the content presented in this lesson, please let me know. You can email me, text me, or send me an email through Blackboard. The objectives for today distinguish between monolingual literacy instructional approaches, sequential transitional model, and biliteracy, simultaneous pair instructional approaches. The language of instruction was creating or using a graphic organizer and notes to write about the biliteracy instructional approach compared to the transitional literacy instructional approach. For next week, que enseñamos while we teach. The lesson is going to be in Spanish, and it's going to be lesson 3, week 3, and we're going to be in Blackboard. A las diferencias entre el español y el inglés. Vamos a repasar la lectura para la próxima clase y vamos a leer y a escribir antes de la clase por línea o parcial. Once again, thank you for your time. I hope this lesson was very informative for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you and have a great night.